So in the last video we talked about how damaging the left medial frontal cortex developed Psi-Lord-like powers, including psychokinesis. And then we went on to how timelines are mutable, and if, like myself, you're five-dimensional, you can simply flick through the catalogue of timelines, find the timeline you like, and lo and behold, the entire past, present, future is changed by the Nagwal man. Luckily, I've eliminated all Nagwals on the planet, so I'm the only one around. And the Elohim parasites, who are in the fifth dimension, I got them to destroy themselves of their own free will by getting them to inhabit all the Judases around the Twisted Grail state, and then carry out the Jeremiah Schwartz and his ilk anti-Elohim rituals on themselves, and in the process do 3 iterations of destroying the Grail state by drawing it wrongly themselves 3 times. So with the Elohim gone, I'm in charge of the fifth dimension and timelines. So now you're in the Psi-Geddon timeline, where all of the great and the good who are unprotected get slaughtered by psychic warfare, aka psychokinesis, and of course militarized telepathy that makes them suicide, drives them mad, etc. Now, how was the world population's brains so damaged that most of the planet's population have a damaged left medial frontal cortex, which of course is needed for operancy in Psi, and even though they have feeble psychokinesis, it can be developed by modalities we'll talk about, so that we basically have the world population turned into weapon systems by the Psi-Lord to set up a psychic lynch mob on the great and the good of the planet who are unprotected by yours truly, to terminate them slowly, or not so slowly, with extreme Psi warfare prejudice. Now, how have the brains of most of the human population been so damaged that they basically have had a frontal lobotomy? It doesn't matter if the right side of the brain is damaged too, that's all to the better, because we want zombies walking around, which we've got. But we do need the left medial frontal cortex damaged to the point where psi operancy develops, and then this wetware can be used as slaveware by the Psi-Lord to carry out basically 8 billion simultaneous psychic warfare operations on the targeted population, which of course are the politicians, billionaires, military leaders, intelligence vermin, which is an oxymoron, for the West. So all of these vermin are being now targeted by psychic warfare. Now, how were the brains of most of the human race damaged? Well, here's Dr. James Giordano. The brain is the battlefield of the future, where he talks about this in extreme depth. And as I say, the guy is the Dr. Mengele of the brain and neuroweapons and targeting the brain. Absolute evil genius. So, pharmaceuticals are used, and organic neurotoxins. That's why, of course, there have been, I thought it was only 100 or so, but there have been coachloads. My cameraman says well over 500 disposables sent in a tram spraying pharmaceuticals, organic neurotoxins and bioweapons anywhere and everywhere. I was wandering around targeting the local population. I, of course, use peroxide in huge amounts up the nose, which, of course, means that all the nanotech's fried, the pharmaceuticals are oxidized, and the organic neurotoxins get done in by the peroxide, and, of course, the weaponized bacteria, mainly, I would think, Staphylococcus aureus, but the military version that eats your flesh alive necrotically. When they poisoned me in the UK, you could actually see the mouth going white in front of your eyes because they were poisoning any food I was buying in the supermarket. That's why, of course, the British have been targeted by me 24/7, and you'll see the total collapse of the UK in the very near future. Oh, but that's all down to five-dimensional changing timelines where Britain is and Europe are destroyed. But let's get back to the point. How did the world population get so brain damaged that they have psi-operancy? Ultra low dose, high specific agents for use in targeting diplomats, local culture, hearts and minds scenarios. No, let's exchange this for the entire population. My cameraman is infested with nanotech to the point where when I walk around with him, the American satellites are using him for targeting because his nanotech is saying, I'm there, and getting AI to say, oh, he's spaced that distance from yours truly, so their beam weapons can try and fry me. So it's got to the point where I don't walk around with him any longer. And he has never had pharmaceutical intervention. And he was living on a farm with a couple of others, and hasn't had a pharmaceutical intervention for decades. But what did he have flying above the farm every day? Ooh, planes spraying huge amounts of neurotoxin nanoparticles onto him to change his heart and his mind. So now, of course, he's in a permanent brain fog and falls asleep at anywhere and anywhere. Simply because he's had years' worth of being sprayed upon, specifically in the UK. So if you're in the UK, all of you have had the lobotomy procedure. If you're in the West, all of you have had this lobotomy procedure. I, of course, have been in Vietnam since 2019. First came in 2017. So if you look up in the skies of Vietnam, you will see blue skies with not any chemtrails 24/7. So you see why I'm in Vietnam. This country doesn't try and lobotomize, poison and kill its own population. Hence in Vietnam, this is the only country, I think, in this neck of the woods where the population is increasing. It's up to 100 million now, and if you just wander around town, you'll see loads and loads of families with children. It's like being back in the 50s. So, next one, high morbidity neuromicrobiological agents. Microbials with high neuropsychiatric symptom clusters for public panic, public health, disintegrative effects. So, they're basically spraying microbes, which is what's coming out of all the backpacks, that's America, Britain, Europe, Australia, Canada, South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand are sending in a train to get yours truly. I've got a lot of enemies for some reason. I don't know why. I'm quite a nice guy, am I not, cameraman?
You are.
I am. But these neuromicrobials infect your brain and cause disintegrative effects. And then we've got gene-edited microbials with novel mortality profiles. So, of course, Portman Down have been busy trying to cook up a bioweapon to kill me, specific to my genome. Fortunately for yours truly, I'm a Psi general, so I simply use psychokinesis to change me from being morbid or mortal, which basically means dying. But of course, if you're in the West, you're getting this stuff sprayed on you 24/7. If you're in Africa, you of course have had all of the pharmaceutical and organic neurotoxin interventions by the World Health Organization, funded by Bill Gates, so that the entire African populations that has been pharmaceuticalized has been lobotomized, and of course who have been going around the third world, lobotomized them by pharmaceutical methods. Then of course we've got nano neuroparticular agents which have a high CNS aggregation, lead, carbon, silicate nanofibers, network disruptors. So these go into your central nervous system and they disrupt the network. And go in your brain, they disrupt your brain. This of course will cause you to get brain fog and become lobotomized. Next, neurovascular hemorrhagic agents for in-close and population use as stroke epidemic induction agents. So they've also got neurovascular hemorrhagic agents that go into your brain and cause your brain to bleed because they destroy the capillaries in the brain and arteries and veins, causing bleeding in the brain. And of course, if you clog up the capillaries, then that part of the brain that was supposed to be fed by the oxygenated blood isn't, and it dies off. So, a huge portion of the world population have been lobotomized, so left medial frontal lobotomization has occurred in 6, possibly 8 billion wetware, all of whom now have the ability to use Psi. Now, why would the Department of Defense do this to the world population? Well, of course, you're turning the population into a gigantic psychic warfare weapon. And who's the target for this weapon? Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, and the great, oh I do love him, Kim Jong-un. Luckily for them, they're protected by the Psi-Lord. So they're all at death's door, and now they're jumping around, fit as fiddles. But you can see why America, NATO, and the Rothschilds, and the Rockefellers, and the royal family developed this. Before the Daily Mail came along, you thought, why are they damaging all our brains and giving us brain fog? Here, of course, we've got directed energy and Havana syndrome with
You get a free
James
coaster
Giordano,
or coffee cup, and also
which comes from this creature Elon Musk, my favourite torture toy, someone who'll be slowly vivisected by psychic warfare, what's happening as we speak, with his satellites, which are all beaming Havana syndrome at everyone on the planet. There we are. You can see them. All of these are firing directed energy weapons at your brain to cause you brain damage. So, neuroscience and technology, which of course are the beam weapons from Elon Musk, puts the brain at our fingertips. And he calls it not a weapon of mass destruction, but a weapon of mass disruption. And all of this technology is not bounded by any laws and is highly effective. There we are. Is covert and non-attributable and incurs ripple effects on across scales and levels. That means because of the 100th monkey effect, once you damage 100 of the population, they become they become open to this meme, which is brain damage. And of course, if you want to brain damage the population at close range, then of course the entire population is carrying around a neuro weapon that's damaging their brain, and of course they are looking at it and it's irradiating the frontal part of their brain all the time, causing this left medial frontal lobe damage. Right as well, but that's irrelevant because we want to damage the left so that the wetware becomes psi-operant. So, there we are. And how many people have you seen wandering around looking at their phone, sitting down, looking at their phone, and the phone, of course, is irradiating their brain with neuro weapon. So we've got EM beam weapons, and your mobile phone, in fact, is a microwave weapon. Here are the big things that they're developing. These ones are lasers, but of course you don't have to laser light. You can do the same thing to microwaves, which we call lasers.
This committee hearing for Homeland Security, and their subject matter was what they called silent weapons. Russia has developed a weapon of taking microwaves and converting them into acoustic waves that can cause damage and or death. Every single person.
So, the guy's an idiot, not acoustic, you modulate them at 20 to 20,000 hertz, the Frey effect, to cause sound, but the microwave actually cooks the brain. And it wasn't the Russians who developed it, it was of course the Americans, and the Americans and the British. Say the CIA guy that came to see me told me that Britain was the #1 killer of its population using microwave weapons, and whole streetfuls of Catholics were getting once in a lifetime cancer seen by their doctors, and everyone in the street was getting these once in a lifetime cancers because they were being irradiated from all the police stations that were irradiating the Catholic population. All reported in the Irish version of the Daily Mirror. You can look it up online. So I was told by the CIA that Britain was the worst death state on the planet. And of course, if you look on all of the polls, you'll find 5G weapon systems targeting everyone in the UK. And Brighton, where I came from, is a high 5G area, so the chance of me living in Brighton ever again is zero, because the nanotech has a 12-bar Bluetooth code, and at GCHQ or the local police station, they can simply get the microwave and optical weapon systems to fire at anyone with their Bluetooth code that wanders past the weapon system on the lamppost, so you can get light weapons fired at you, which are in all the street lights, and microwave and above weapons from the 5G beam weapons, which are on every lamppost, building, everywhere, firing at you, because today is your day to be zapped and get killed, all done from GCHQ or from MI5 headquarters or MI6 headquarters or the local police station. Because remember, it was Brighton police that were microwaving yours truly, hence you had to have a steel room. The British police have death squads. So the British police are routinely killing hundreds of thousands of the population using microwave weapons. And now, of course, because they've all been tagged by pharmaceutical means, the weapon systems can find you from space, as with my cameraman, who's just been sprayed upon. He's infested with nanotech. Or, as you walk past the weapon system, it registers your tag and fires at you, your 12-bar Bluetooth code. Maria Z's covered this in microscopic detail. Z Media, so you can look at that. So, microwave weapons are frying the population in every Western city. Now, trying to blame dear old Vladimir Putin for using microwaves, but of course the British and the Americans and NATO, they don't use any of this stuff. It's only the enemy of NATO that uses these weapons. I think not. I'm in Vietnam, and the only one trying to target me with microwave weapons, the Americans, from their satellites. If I was in Britain, we would have 20, 30 vans around the place of residence of yours truly, beaming, and when I'm gone, they all vanish. So, as I say, Britain is a neo-Stalinist death squad state, and it doesn't need to put you in a gulag. It's killing you with these neuro weapons and with beam weapons. And we see here the Americans whining because allegedly their diplomats were targeted in Cuba when they opened up their embassy, which happened while, ironically, while I was in Cuba. So obviously there were CIA death squads with weapons desperate to do me in Cuba. So, as I say, live by the sword, die by the sword, CIA filth. So, here we've got, there we are.
Mysterious direct energy. Headaches and vertigo, the targets they believe of a directed energy microwave weapon. There's a...
So, all of this has been to show that all of the Western population and all the third world population, thanks to the WHO, have been lobotomized and all can be used as wetware for psychic warfare operations. What are the implications of this? And how do we fully get them up to the power levels where they can be used to target the entire political class, military class, secret police class, and billionaire class of the enemies of the Psi-Lord? So I just found this born-again Christian's site. As I say, her preaching bores me endlessly, but she has come late to the show and done a video about how all of the A-listers are witches. And she goes through the witches, Raven.
As psychic powers.
What I believe actually is humans have the ability in their brain to tap into energy fields that allow for truth to connect when you know how to translate it correctly. I can walk into a room and read the room. People might not think that's psychic, but what that is reading energy, and energy is in the psychic plane. When I was younger and I had certain traumatic experiences, I personally remember after doing meditation to a level that other people would be like, what are you doing? I'm like, no.
You can guess what traumatic experiences this child star had in Hollywood. I won't go into it. I'll leave it to your imagination. But of course it produces alters and all part of MK Ultra.
To light my candles and I need to meditate, and I just allowed my spirit guides to help me, and even till this day that happens, and I feel like that.
And she of course was with the famous black actor who got jailed for raping loads of women, Bill Cosby.
With J-Lo. This is what he was saying. Noah said, quote, "We participated together in sacrifices of chickens and hens, and in one occasion I was present when they were cleansing Jennifer with the blood of the hen. The hen's blood was poured over Jennifer until she was covered in it," Noah said. "Then she was bathed in holy water to wash away the blood, and herbs were passed over her body. Meanwhile, the godmother was asking the gods to cleanse Jennifer and save our marriage," he said. Noah testified that Lopez, quote, "was doing voodoo when we weren't married. She was doing bad things to a lot of people when we were friends, and I knew all this time because we did personally, me and her, to this particular lady." Noah added that Lopez did voodoo and, quote, "all this religious bullshit," unquote, to former lovers, including Sean Puffy Combs.
I cannot believe how much wickedness is being Lana Del Rey. And guys, this is so important that we talk about this, because I can't tell you how many Christians believe that Lana Del Rey is a Christian. Because why? She told everyone that she's a Christian, but how many times do we have to learn that just because someone says they're a Christian does not automatically make them a Christian?
Those aren't Tennessee Christian values. I am Christian. That's not what we stand for. I am Christian. That's not what we stand for.
Lana Del Rey was accused of being a witch by a girl on Instagram, Tracy Costin, who made a video about Lana Del Rey being a witch and using witchcraft at her shows. Lana's response: "I know the Bible verse for verse better than you do." Now obviously, could Lana Del Rey be a Christian? Of course. I don't know her heart. You don't him from becoming president.
Lana confirms that earlier this year, she actually attempted to use witchcraft to get rid of President Donald Trump, admitting she instructed her fans to join a mass occult ritual against him, saying, "Yeah, I did it, why not?" She also added, "I'm in line with Yoko Ono and John Lennon and the belief that there's a power to the vibration of your thoughts. Your thoughts are very powerful things, and they become words, and words become actions, and actions lead to physical charges. I really do believe that words are one of the last forms of magic, and I'm a bit of a mystic at heart."
She went on Instagram and shared the ingredients for the spell and the dates to cast the spells. The dates also being intentional.
At the stroke of midnight, February 24th, March 26th, April 24th, May 23rd. Now, those dates lined up with the waning crescent moon and also a worldwide witch-led movement to cast a binding spell to remove Donald Trump from office. Ingredients included an unflattering photograph of Trump, a white candle, water, salt, and, well, a feather.
And before we move on, I just want to point out the fact that just because you know scripture does not mean that you...
I kind of had an awakening and had so many questions and was so curious. I was very much on this idea of like a spiritual brigade, and I kind of wanted to figure out who they were specifically so I can be more intimate with them, and I definitely got that. It's just...
So for those of you who are not gay like me and look at all the A-list gossip and know them all by heart, that's Vanessa Hutchins.
Protective thing to be able to do.
And before I share the rest of these clips, I just want to point out something that
you know, like open their eyes up a bit more.
Here is her charging her crystals in her car, leading us to number 5, which is Lizzo.
Why men great till they gotta be great?
Here's is Lizzo inviting millions of her followers to join her on Instagram Live for a meditation with crystals.
I wanted to empower everybody, and I wanted to let you guys know that we have power, you have power. And I wanted to take the time today to just do a mass meditation, 30 minutes of your time, and we're gonna join in agreement.
And here is Lizzo again, also doing a guided meditation at one of her concerts.
This is a bad meditation. Breathe in for 6, 5, 4. Now let's visualize our higher self.
And guys, I really want you to remember this. I want you to remember the wording here, because this wording, this vocabulary, this often exposes that somebody is dabbling in New Age. Words like vibrations, higher self, frequencies. Be very careful when you hear verbiage like this. I can't tell you how many Christian YouTubers I've clicked on their videos and they use this wording. Be on guard and be very careful. But also, these crystals are a very large part to New Age. And you may have seen these shops pop up in your town within the last few years, and a growing rise of people using these rocks, which are referred to as crystals. I remember about 5 years ago, my friend reached out to me and he's like, hey, do you want to come with me to Sedona so I can charge my rocks? I was like, what? That was kind of my first exposure to all of this, but let me show you really quick what these really are so you know. The first historical references to the use of crystals come from ancient Sumerians, who included crystals in magic formulas. The ancient Egyptians used stones primarily for protection and health. Topaz was used to combat night terrors and purge evil spirits. Crystals are in fact in the Bible. And fun fact, crystals are used to describe heaven itself. Crystals, gemstones are beautiful, which is why it wasn't that hard for the enemy to convince people to worship them. This is exactly what God meant when he said, you shall have no other gods.
So she does a good videos until she gets into a preachy, born-again Christian mode, then she go on, but the videos, really high quality. No wonder she's got 542,000 views. Here's another witch.
Every day, sometimes if I feel like I want to make a decision, I'll pull one out and see what it tells me. I'm not sure what kind of energy I've put into it. It says the flute. Connection to spirit, understanding and education, ritual and celebration. Life is magical.
Number 2, we have Emma Watson from Harry Potter. We have to do a whole video.
For those of you who aren't into A-listers, that was Dua Lipa.
Went down a rabbit hole with Harry Potter as well, but here is Emma Watson.
Hi, I'm Emma Watson. This is what's in my bag. Oh, my tarot cards! I try and pull one every day when I do my journaling. This is actually the original tarot deck. It's a classic, but I have a few different ones. Can we do it now? Oh, wow. It's on camera. I am usually freaked out by how accurate the cards I pull from this deck are, so let's see what I get. So I pulled the World card. The world represents an ending to a cycle of life, a pause in life before the next big cycle beginning.
Then we have Kate Hudson.
Hi British folk, I'm Kate Hudson and this is what's in my bag. I always travel with the same mandalas. This is lapis. I like these when I'm traveling, just for protection. And then I take them out when I meditate. I find them to be soothing and sometimes I wear them when I feel like I need them.
Ariana Grande, unsurprisingly.
Welcome to What's in My Bag. My name is Ariana Grande, Sage. House of Intuition Protecting Dust. Clear Tarot. I do these every day. Everyone comes in and out of my tent to do everyone's cards for them. I'm serious.
And lastly, we have an actress that I really liked, so this actually made me kind of upset, and I was a little just surprised to see this, but Anya Taylor-Joy.
How many crystals does Anya have in her bag? Love him so much, and he's been with me since I started working. I bought this crystal on my first movie, The Witch, and I love him. Are you ready? This is my newest baby. También tengo, estas a mí me encantan, empecé a leer como hace 6 años, 7 años, entonces todas las tarjetas son re lindas. Bueno, vamos a ver, mis cristales, me gusta agarrarlos todos en una mano. Mis amigos siempre se burlan de mí porque pensás que no tengo cristal en la mano y de repente lo ves, como duermo con ellos. Los tengo en el makeup chair en la mañana cuando estoy trabajando, bueno, para la protección y para centrarte.
But this is my rose quartz. The thing about rocks is like they choose you, and this one just chose me because I think this is why. Because I do this all the time. And just always like keep some good energy around me, so I keep this with me wherever I go.
The entire video here on YouTube, Taylor Alessia, 8 days ago. If you want to watch it rather than just me scrolling through to the bits I fancied. And for those of you not into Hollywood and A-listers and all the gossip, you can see that the majority of them are witches and into using psychic powers to get what they want. Now, of course, since they are worshipped by all the lobotomized, we're now into the Sochavanov scenario, where Sochavanov, a Russian researcher, who you can read about in the wonderful Ostrander and Schroeder's books, Psychic Warfare Behind the Iron Curtain, who were in fact Canadians funded, run by MI6 to steal the psychic warfare they could get from the Soviets. And of course a Russian who contacted me had been put into a mental institution for spilling too much to this duo and other researchers, and he'd had his psychiatric lobotomization, which of course is when they pump you full of psychiatric drugs. And here are the psychiatric drugs, and when the British locked me up in a psychiatric facility, because of course I told them that they were cursed by Lucifer because they married into the Rothschild Middleton bloodline and had the pups. Lucifer would destroy the royal family and they were cursed. The Queen didn't like this much and wanted to disprove that, so she got the police to try and stick me in the loony bin, but of course they couldn't keep me there because I was sane. The psychiatrist said I was sane and they kicked me out. But while I was there, they offered to give me psychiatric drugs, which the effect is to lobotomize and damage your brain, which happened to the Russian who was stupid enough to talk to MI6 and Canadian researchers who are in fact spies. And here are the long-term effects.
Evidence that schizophrenia is this degenerative brain disease where neurons are dying off. But not all researchers, because some of them wondered whether this could actually be an effect of the drug itself. They wondered whether the patients with schizophrenia, because they were on these antipsychotic medications, were experiencing brain shrinkage. Not because of the schizophrenia, but because of the drug. So they wanted to do some clinical trials where they could look at this problem. But this is really challenging, because one of the challenges in this research is you would need to have two groups of patients with schizophrenia, one unmedicated and one medicated. And given the widespread use of these medications, it was hard to find unmedicated patients, but it's also hard to convince patients with schizophrenia and psychotic symptoms to forego treatments for long periods of time so they could do these MRI studies. And because we can't do these studies in humans, researchers came up with another way of looking at this. They decided that they would give these medications to healthy monkeys, because these are the most genetically similar to humans. That's what Dolph Peterson and his research team did in 2005. They looked at macaque monkeys treated with olanzapine or haldol for anywhere from 17 up to 24 months, and what they found was shocking. The healthy monkeys who were given haldol or olanzapine experienced an 8 to 11% reduction in their brain weight compared to the healthy controls. And what they found was that most of the neuronal loss was in the frontal lobe. So these are the areas in the brain that are associated with high-level thinking, strategic planning, executive functioning. Now, this finding was very concerning, But not all people were fully convinced by these animal studies, and some were arguing that we don't know if this is even relevant to human. Maybe humans are more resilient. And while I think that's unlikely because I would already be concerned if we were seeing this in monkeys, I think there is some merit to this argument. And so researchers kept on looking into this. And the next researcher to pick this up was Fusarian Polly and his research team, and they looked into this in 2013. They analyzed more than 1,000 patients with schizophrenia on antipsychotic medication over a period of 72 weeks. That's like 17 months. And then they compared them to healthy controls without schizophrenia. And what they found was eye-opening. Over time, they saw that there was a progressive decrease in the grey matter volume and enlargements in the lateral ventricles in the schizophrenic patients on antipsychotics, but not in the other patients not on the drug. Now, I know a lot of you aren't familiar with some of this language, but grey matter volume is neurons. So when we look at the brain, we have grey matter and we have white matter. White matter is a lot of the connections between the neurons, but the grey matter is the other neuronal cell bodies. What that means is they're seeing reductions in neuron. I mean, you could say this is brain atrophy or brain damage. And when they started to look at these patients with schizophrenia to see what was associated with the most neuronal loss, what they found was it was associated with the cumulative exposure to antipsychotic medications, meaning the more antipsychotic you had taken over a long period of time, the more likely you were to have neuronal cell loss. And interestingly, they did not find that the duration or the severity of the patient's schizophrenia was associated with the grey matter loss. Now, what that means essentially is it doesn't look like having schizophrenia or having more severe symptoms of schizophrenia was associated with that, because that might be a confounding factor that would make it look like that, because you could say something like, well, the patients on more antipsychotic had worse schizophrenia. And then because of that, you would say, well, it's not the antipsychotic medication, it's actually because they just had worse schizophrenia. But that's not what they were finding. When they were looking at these associations, the duration or the severity of the schizophrenia was not associated with the level of neuronal degeneration. It was just the cumulative exposure to antipsychotic treatment. And so for me, having looked at this evidence now, what's happened to the monkeys and what we're seeing in humans on this medication, I would say that's quite compelling evidence that antipsychotic medications, when used long terms, may be associated with some brain shrinkage or neuronal damage. Now, the next sign of brain injury from antipsychotics I want to talk about is fetida dyskinesia. Now, this is a complicated word, but it essentially describes a type of movement disorder caused by these medications. And it's characterized by involuntary repetitive movements of muscles. Typically this starts around the mouth and you'll have lip movement.
So we can see that a lot of the Western population on psychiatric drugs are getting wonderful brain damage. In the right position in the brain, the frontal lobes, and remember we want left medial frontal lobe damage, and the more significant the better, then these become operant wetware that can be slaved to AI via nanotech for this.